My guest with us today, Matt Rump, runs CycleRecycle in Kessingland, a professional cyclist, but I'm guessing you didn't cycle today.
No, I didn't cycle today.
What was your journey like along the A12 and through?
It was fairly eventful. There was no stoppages. Everyone was just being very cautious on the road and just taking it safe, which was nice to see.
There's loads of leaves down, and just on my short journey into work this morning, a lot of trees had lost limbs. Trees were down as well. Did you see things like that?
Yeah, I think the time I left, I think a lot of the damage had been cleared up. So I was quite fortunate that the journey was quite smooth. Ipswich town centre was absolutely heaving.
It's been a nightmare all day. If it is still a nightmare, let me know. Really chocker.
Yeah, it was stop-start pretty much all the way in, to be honest.
But you got here.
Yeah.
You got here. So we're going to talk CycleRecycle. We'll talk all about that as well. And you must be thrilled to see huge increase in numbers of people out on their bikes these days.
Yeah, there's apparently there's 1 million more cyclists than there was 3 years ago. So that's good. It's someone said to me that it's actually the UK's. Based on participation, it should be the UK's most popular sport, but obviously we've got football and rugby and cricket and that sort of thing. But yeah, it seems to be growing, and I think sort of the success that we've had with the Tour de France and the Olympics, it just seems to be getting better and better.
And a really lovely family link with the Tour de France, which we'll mention in just a minute or two. I'll make you wait. We'll talk about that after the Carpenters.
Morning, Natalie. Well, like a number of other
corner and the road will be clear at the moment, particularly as it's getting dark as well. So let's see how we're doing.
And the Stansted Express is suspended for the rest of the day. That's the latest from BBC Radio Suffolk Travel.
Help us keep the county up to speed.
01473 212121.
So we have pulled up the sofa, amongst all the other things that we're doing as well. We've pulled up the sofa. And my guest today, as we heard, is delighted to see the increase in numbers of people out cycling, because Matt Rump is a professional cyclist, started renovating a few old bicycles at home rather than seeing them dumped in landfill, and is now running a business in Kessingland called CycleRecycle. He won a business startup award last year. And cycling, this I teased towards this, is obviously in the family because his granddad was the director of the first Tour de France. Is that true?
Well, I think it was my great-great-grandfather. My grandmother was from Belgium, and she told us that when the first Tour de France started, they didn't want to have a French commissionaire, who was the guy who's like the ref. And so they selected someone from Belgium, and he was the first director of the Tour de France. So cycling is in my blood, I think.
So it had to be there. I mean, and has cycling always been something you've loved?
Yeah, I've probably been playing with bikes. I've turned 40 last year, and
you don't look it.
I feel it. And I've probably been playing with bikes for 35 years. I was fortunate enough to turn pro in my early 20s and travelled the world and raced all over the world, not road cycling, mountain biking. Unfortunately, I injured myself after about 4 years of pro cycling, which means I had to retire, and then I had to sort of think about what was the alternative. I played around doing some other things away from cycling, but it always seemed to call me back. And I was fortunate enough to get the shop in 2011 and haven't looked back since, really. So
tell me how that moment arose there when you realised there was a niche in the market, because it's true, you were just sort of renovating old bikes at home, wasn't it?
Well, in fairness, I was unemployed, and I had a load of bicycles in the garden and thought, how can I store these to protect them from the winter? So I dismantled them, and I was looking at some of the parts and thought, actually, someone might want these. So I used a auction site, and people bought them, to my surprise. And so I listed a few more, and more people bought them, and it just built and built and built. I then went and did a business course with Norfolk and Waveney Enterprise Services, who sort of guided me in the direction to go. I then was fortunate enough to get some funding from Foundation East, who have been brilliant, I should say, and that enabled me to get a better computer and a better stock system and a camera and that sort of thing. And then one day I was taking the parts to the post office to post them around the world, and my local pet food shop was up for sale. And so I went in and asked a few questions, met the landlord within 10 minutes of that conversation and shook his hand 20 minutes later, and I sort of went home and went, hang on, I've got a shop. And Yeah, it's gone from strength to strength, really. I don't advertise. Technically, on Twitter, it's the biggest bicycle shop in Europe now because they've got 44,000 followers on Twitter. And parts are going out of the door faster than I can get them in, really. It's been a little bit of a success story. We saved 1,500 bikes from landfill in the 2.5 years I've been there. We look after our customers, and I think the big thing we do is offer an alternative. A lot of my customers want brand new items, but not all my customers have got the money or can afford to replace things. Well, I carry any bicycle that comes into the shop. It gets graded as either one that we can do up to sell or one that's a donor bike. And so if someone comes in and wants a pair of tyres so they can get to work, or they can go and find a job, or they can get to school, our tyres start from £5 rather than £16, £17, which means we're keeping these things out of landfill because they're perfectly usable, but more importantly, we're encouraging people to cycle. We're saving people money, and everyone's a winner.
And not everyone wants a posh bike in case it gets nicked.
Yeah, this is true, and that is a huge epidemic at the moment, is bicycles getting stolen. I don't really know what the answer to that is, because with the exception of locking them up really, really well, but you hear stories about how people's houses are getting broken into purely to get bicycles and that sort of thing. I mean, some sort of registration system, I think, would be the answer, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it? So take me through from the very beginning. You saw this idea. Would you have ever dreamt you'd run a business?
Yeah, I ran a business before, hence why I had quite a few bikes. I used to run an activity company. They'd taken holiday makers and so on guided tours. But the cost of insuring that just became ridiculous. So like I say, I had these bikes in the garden and just dismantled them. But I'm a big believer in sort of upcycling and recycling, because I don't think it's particularly sustainable to continually replace and replace. The biggest manufacturer in the world is a company called Giant Cycles, and last year they made 120 million bicycles. And that is purely to service those people who want a new bicycle every year. Well, I don't know if that's particularly sustainable or particularly good financial sense. I'm sure it's great for Giant, but for you and I. And at some stage in the last 10 years, the bicycle has become disposable. Some of my customers are in their 70s and 80s, and they're riding bikes that are 30 years old and can't sort of get their head around the idea of replacing things sort of for the sake of replacing them. But I think that's kind of the direction everyone's going in. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to have our TV repaired, it seemed, every 6 months. Well, now you go into
you just chuck it out
and buy a new one. Yeah. And, you know, my partner's laptop sort of played up about 2 years ago, and I don't think there was an atom in her body that thought, let's get this fixed. It was, right, let's go and get a new one.
The latest model.
Yeah, absolutely. And the companies that supply that chain all make an awful lot of money by getting us to replace things rather than repair, and I don't think that's particularly sustainable.
And where'd you come up with the name? Was that easy? CycleRecycle?
Yeah, I was really lucky, to be honest. It was.
It wasn't just a night in the pub, was it?
No. It was just sort of playing on the computer with some logos, and just thought, hang on, that seems to stick. And yeah, it kind of says everything I do, really.
So before you actually got the shop where you're based, you were mostly selling parts, really, breaking down bikes and selling parts. Yeah. But now you do lots more than that, don't you?
Yeah, we do. We do servicing. I'm Cytec registered, which is the industry standard. So we do bicycle service and we do bicycle repairs. We sell new and used parts. We do bicycle hire and we do bicycle recycling as well. We run a club, and we had a team recently do the Dust to Dawn event, in which I took part in as well. Just anything cycling, really. Interestingly, I get a lot of people who are kind of garden shed inventors coming in saying, have you got one of these, or have you got something that will fit into here? So it certainly keeps me busy.
And I think you're quite proactive in sort of like cycle lanes, trying to make sure that people are safe,
absolutely,
and that people are mobilised as well. Yeah,
absolutely. We had a campaign recently on Twitter based on a cycle lane near the shop where cars seemed to think they could park on it, and we embarrassed a few people high up in government, and they've just just put in a lay-by for people to park in, so that no one's parking on the cycle path anymore. So cyclists stick together, I think, and like I said, I've got a big following on Twitter for the shop, and they all harassed the people necessary in order to get the result.
Do you think cyclists have enough provision? Do you think they're taken seriously? We had when I was doing the breakfast show, we had a huge debate about whether these days cyclists should be allowed on pavements simply because the roads are too narrow and so on.
I don't know if you go to Holland, it's pedestrians first, cyclists second, cars third, and in this country it seems to be the other way round. Cyclists are given sort of the worst part of the road, usually the part with the potholes in, usually the part with the drains in, and we're expected to sort of just put up and shut up to a certain extent. What I find interesting is the money that was spent on high-speed rail, the new high-speed rail route. For the same money, there could have 1 million miles of purpose-built cycle lane could have been built, which I'm fairly confident 90% of the population would have got benefit from, as opposed to maybe 1 or 2% from the high-speed rail to take people up north or down south. And so no, I don't think it's taken seriously. In Holland, I think they worked out that per head they spent something like £25 per head, and in this country it's just gone above the pound. So I think that tells you everything you need to know, really.
Even though the government wants us all to get out of our cars and to get on our bikes.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a cyclist, and I've raced some of the toughest downhills in the world. But I feel uncomfortable cycling along some of the roads in this country because you haven't got the provision, like you say, for being safe, you know. And it is a big challenge to get people. It's one thing saying you should be cycling. It's another thing saying it's good for fitness and it'll get you out and about and fresh air and all the rest of it. But if you don't feel safe doing it, then I don't think people vote with their feet, don't they? And will decide not to do something if they think they're going to get hurt.
We'll come back and talk more about CycleRecycle. We'll chat to Matt, he's my guest on the sofa, give you all the websites and all those sorts of things as well. So if you're interested in finding out more, we'll also find out about him being a pro cyclist. Guest with me, though, on the sofa at the moment, Matt Rump from CycleRecycle in Kessingland. And you're a local boy.
I am.
Went to school?
In Lowestoft, Benjamin Britten High School.
Did all right in the exams?
Did okay. Okay.
I gather you studied environmental protection and conservation management.
I did, yes.
And then you went off and were a pro cyclist.
I think the desire to be a pro cyclist was there long before I got to university. But fortunately, the opportunity sort of arose when mountain biking was quite a young sport. And yeah, cycling's given me everything, really. And it's given me income, it gives me somewhere to live, it gives me something to do, it keeps me fit, and it's shown me the world, so I've been very lucky.
When did you first get hooked? When did you know you wanted to make it more than just like me, getting on my bike to go out with my mates?
I think it was probably when I was at school, when my mum told me, she said, if you just knuckle down at school, I won't moan at you for going on your bike. And then I knew it was probably more important than the studying, but to keep everything calm at home, I knuckled down at school and just as soon as I got home, got the work done and just went out on my bike. So
explain the difference between road racing and the mountain biking.
Road racing is the Tour de France type of cycling on the drop handlebar lightweight bicycles, which you've got your Bradley Wiggins and your Chris Froome, who've won the last two Tour de France's, and it's probably more noticeable lately for Lance Armstrong's sort of admission that he doped and that sort of thing. Mountain biking covers a whole spectrum of different sports. I was a downhill mountain biker, so I used to.
Is it off road rather?
Yeah, and so I used to do the downhill mountain biking. So that's I was sponsored by a company in the States, and they were good enough to supply me with the bikes and the air tickets. So
you'd just go from race to race, would you?
Yeah. It was a good 3 years of my life, I have to say.
Did you win lots?
I won a few. I podiumed quite regularly, I guess. At one stage, I was in the top 5 in the world.
Woo!
But unfortunately, I had quite a horrific injury on my left knee. And I had to sort of make a decision between racing. But what was interesting was I love cycling for the fact that you can get on your bike and get away from cycle away from problems, or if you've got stuff on your mind, you can use it for that. And I found it quite difficult to adapt to the fact that someone was telling me I had to go and ride and putting pressure on, and because it's a sort of, it's a sport, but it's also a business as well. And that was the biggest challenge, most probably, was dealing with sort of, you need to be on the podium today, you need to be on the podium. And but yeah, it was good fun.
So what was your best race?
Probably Mammoth Mountain in California. I got measured at 64 miles an hour going down there, and that was a nice course.
Was it scary to do it?
I was a lot younger, and you kind of don't have the same fears you have now. You do get an adrenaline rush, but people used to say I used to take my brain out before I went on the race and put it back in at the bottom, because I think if you're scared, then you tend to tense up, and if you tense up, that's when you hurt yourself. So it was good fun.
It's just reactions and sort of reflexes.
Yeah, it was an interesting part of my life, an interesting chapter. I couldn't do it now. I don't get me wrong, I cycle and I go mountain biking now, but some of the things I used to do when I've got a business to run, I can't afford to break my leg or fracture my collarbone and that sort of stuff. So,
and were you in hospital for very long with your knee?
I was off. I was told not to use it for the best part of 3 months. But during that time, there was sort of you try and get back quicker so that you can continue competing, and you've got the pressures of salaries and that kind of thing. So I managed to get on my bike after about 3 months, but I think I knew then that my knee was always going to be quite weak. So unfortunately, I had to retire.
And you've tried other things, but as you said, coming back to bicycles in the end, and you just made the mistake of mentioning to me that you were a redcoat once upon a time.
Yeah, I came back from university and was being nagged to find a job, and looked in a local paper and applied for the wrong one. There was a series of telephone numbers for a holiday park, and there was like caterers, bar staff, sports organisers and entertainers, and I thought sports organisers, that sounds all right, kicking a football around all summer, I could do that. And I accidentally rung the entertainers number and walked into a room with football boots over my shoulder and a tennis racket in my hand, and there was magicians and dancers, and they said, right, go into this room and learn this dance routine. So I learnt a dance routine at Cotton Eye Joe, and I'm not a dancer by any stretch of the imagination. And I got on stage and I thought, oh, what the heck, this is, it was a job. So I kind of did all the year-ha's and the whoop-whoops at the right place. And next thing I knew, I was being hired to be an entertainer. And, it was good fun. I've dressed as a Spice Girl in front of 2,000 people. It's, yeah, it was good.
It was at Hopton, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Hopton,
when were you there?
1997.
You might have seen him. if you saw Scary Spice, then Ginger Spice.
I was Posh Spice.
If you saw Posh Spice, then it was a Matt.
Yeah, that's right. But it was good fun, and I learnt a lot, actually. A lot of the things I learnt from there, sort of, I've carried forward over the last sort of 15 years, blimey, and sort of just like how to make people happy, and I would say I probably learnt more from that than I have any business course I've done in terms of. Go on.
I was going to say, and because you say about keeping people happy, and you really believe in the customer side of things, don't you? The customer service.
Absolutely. I think I'm a big believer in sort of one of the most important things with my shop when I set it up was to become part of the community. I can take you into bike shops, local and all over the country, where you walk in and the first question is, what do you want to buy? Well, that's not the attitude of my shop. A lot of my customers come in for a cup of coffee, they come in for a chat, they come in to talk about the local area or a little bit of gossip and that sort of thing. But in the last, I would say, probably 8 months, I think my village would probably miss me now if I wasn't there, rather than when you're starting up, they kind of look at it as if to say, oh, well, we'll give him 12 months, see how he's getting on. But I make a big effort to be a big part of the community and do things for the community. We make an angel at the shop every year for the church. We write in the Kessingland Times so that people are aware of what we're doing and that sort of thing. So it's really important that we have a relationship with our customers rather than just be there to try and sell them something. Or
do you make money as well?
Yeah. Well, if anyone's thinking about going into business, a recycling business, we're 160% up on last year, which not a lot of businesses, I don't think, can say that.
Especially in tough times as well.
Yeah, we've just been nominated for 6 more awards at the Chamber of Commerce. We've got big plans over the next 12 months to franchise the business, so there'll be one hopefully in every town in the country. Because the idea works. I like the idea of someone being able to walk into my shop and saying, "Have you got this?" and me saying, "No, but I can get one from Margate," and keep more and more stuff out of landfill. Someone said to me once that the best businesses are the ones where the customer wins, the business wins, and the environment wins. And my business seems to do that. And it's more through just the way the business has evolved, I think, rather than sort of planning. But we have 3 really important goals. One is to promote cycling, one is to save people money, and the other is to keep bikes out of landfill. And anything we do, even coming and speaking to you today, Leslie, has to fulfil at least one of those things. So today I'm promoting the shop and cycling and having a nice chat as well. But it's critical that we look after our customers, because they're the lifeblood of the business, really.
And you mentioned the franchise. You've got big ideas. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd love to see one of these all over the place, yeah?
Yeah, that's the plan. I've just spent the last 6 months working on the franchise agreement, and yeah, so if anyone wants to buy a bike shop.
But it's brilliant, because people can come to you and buy one of the top range of bikes, but they can come to you and get a part for the bike that they've already got. And so you touch anyone of any age and of any sphere, really,
Well,
don't you?
I think the difference between us and a lot of shops is we offer an alternative, as opposed to having to buy a new one of these or a more expensive new one of these. We offer that alternative where we can offer a recycled part, we can offer a new one. And our advice is always free, so we always look after the customer, make sure they're getting what they want when they want it at the price they want.
Website CycleRecycle. What do we leave people?
www.cyclerecycluk.com.
Okay, and you're in Kessingland?
In Kessingland, yeah, on the High Street in Kessingland.
On the High Street, so they can pop by as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, excellent, and thank you so much for coming in. Been really interesting. Have a safe journey home.
I will do. Thanks for
get
having
out
me.
of Ipswich fairly swiftly. So. That's Matt Rump with us. So CycleRecycle UK, did you say?
Yeah, it's cyclerecycleuk.com.
.com. Brilliant. So have a look at the website, or go to Kessingland and have a look at the shop as well.